Okay, guys, today we are doing a Pit 136, and we're going to be talking through things as we go, and I'll be talking about the strategies that work best for me, and overall strategies for the rogue, but also helpful things for all classes. So let's get into it. Before we do, like and subscribe would help out the channel a lot. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to first talk about the crowd control here. As you can see, I'm using shared misery, and so it's spreading all of the CCs to everybody. The high lucky hit chance that the Heartseeker builds have. It's pretty convenient. Uh, so I am. I know that a lot of people like to run a lot of dodge chance on the rogue, and I would like to run a lot. I mean, they got like 30%. Just my gear is not actually the best, but it's getting there. So I'm actually running every type of CC, and that goes into the boss as well. It's really important to have them all. It's like slow, immobilize, freeze, stun, just one of each on everything. And so that covers every single type of CC. And the build for this will be in the max roll link in the description below. So you can actually check out the build because the video is kind of long, so I'm not going to be going, you know, showing the gear and stuff, but you can look at it there, and I'll be talking about it here. So all of those CCs are going to add to your stagger on the boss too, and they all stack differently. Zario has a really good guide on all that and how that all works. I'm not going to get too much into that, but basically you want to have a lot of CC, and you want to be spreading that around so these guys aren't smacking face. Uh, okay, so I'm also using Subterfuge skills instead of Dark Shroud because I'm using Smoke Bomb, I'm using Concealment. This is a Flurry hybrid build. Okay, so I am using Flurry. I think it's really good because you can basically cap your attack speed with this build without having to actually stack any attack speed whatsoever on your gear. Um, you're using accelerating aspect as well, so you get a lot of attack speed, and you get to focus mainly more on your lucky hit, your vulnerable, and a little bit of crit chance because we are using combo points. We don't have that extra crit chance from focus. Okay, and the subterfuge skills really help because your smoke bomb duration and cooldown is the same with if you're using Harlequin's Crest. That way, when you are at the boss, your stagger, you're getting the maximum amount of stagger out of your smoke bomb. And like I said, I'm not going to get into that. Sorry, that was a really good guide on all that. Okay, and all of the damage that you're going to want to be stacking with the Heartseeker build, you want to be thinking about how it double dips because how Victimize works is it's going to buff the damage of your main attack. So like whatever damage you're dealing with your attack, right? You're going to deal 10 times, 20 times. It's going to get crazy. Sometimes it's 50 times more than that or whatever. But because also once the Victimize goes off, some of those damage bonuses that you are stacking, they also double dip and then buff Victimize again. But certain things do not actually go into that Victimize damage, right? Like critical strike damage, right? Unless you got a shrine buff, Victimize does not critically strike. So you're not getting that double dip there. And also, I know everybody wants to stack a lot of dexterity, which, right, dexterity is great, but dexterity increases your skills. So you get the first thing, right? It's going to buff the damage of it because your skill's hitting harder, but Victimize is not technically a skill. So it's not going to get that second double dip, but damage, raw damage does. So that's why in my builds I'm running as much damage as I can on my weapons as well. So explaining that. And then the Paragon as well, you're trying to like always think about, you know, is this thing going to double dip? Is this type of damage going to double dip? That's why I'm using daggers as well, because swords have critical strike damage on them. That does not double dip. I'm trying to maximize the victimized damage to take these guys out. I'm also using a bow instead of a crossbow, mainly because it just feels better. I know there's a little extra vulnerable damage, and I'm usually with the flurry pretty close to these guys. But just the crossbows just don't feel good, and you're attacking faster, and so you're just applying those crowd controls a lot more often, and you're healing faster too. Like it's important. Flurry is actually really good for healing you in these tight spots when you have a lot of guys. So and of course, yeah, with the daggers and the bow, your flurry that you're using quite often is a little more fluid than you using swords, even though, you know, yeah, it's just a little more, a little better. Okay, the imprints as well that I'm using, Those are all focused on this kind of the same thing. What's going to double dip? That's why I'm not taking Edge Masters. Again, Edge Master, it increases your damage with skills based on how much energy you have, and that's not going to double dip because, like I said again, uh, Victimize is not a skill. So I'm actually, in place of that, I'm using Intercom. And if you really think about it, and when you're moving around, you get that 10% all the time, right? But that's going to double dip another 10% onto your Victimize, so you're technically getting the same amount of damage you are out of Edge Master out of Intercom. But you have the option of if you can stand still, you're going to get a lot of extra damage. And I've tested this out. You just it's you deal it's better. That's better for this, in my opinion. Okay. Uh, the smoke bomb too. Very important that you don't throw that on unstoppable guys because you need that for the damage buff. So yeah, try to manage your smoke bomb well too. And this is where things start to get crazy. Yeah, this boss, you don't want this boss. This boss is bad when you're trying to push these high end pits. There, this boss, very very difficult to manage. Usually you're trying to fish for an easier boss to keep pushing higher. And this is not an easy boss. But we're going to talk about the CC and how you make sure that you are putting the max amount of stagger on these bosses when you're fighting them. All your imprints that you have that have the crowd control, the days, all that, and then your tempers that you're doing all those variations on in the gear that you see in the max roll build. That's all to ensure that every type of CC is getting stacked on them, and those those are different types of CC. Even though you have days on your boots as concussive strikes and days on another piece of gear as the temper, that's actually a separate type of days. So you add more and more stagger that way, and so yeah, just getting all of those staggers is the way to control these bosses and make sure that right they're inevitably going to go into that stage where they have a diminished return on the amount of stagger you can put on them, and so you need to be able to punch through that and keep stunning them. Yeah, so it's gonna be this is one hell of a fight. It's very difficult. You're trying to keep him in the caltrops. This guy's jumping around, launching crap. There's just crap everywhere. It's just an absolute shit show. So, gonna talk about now the the concealment here and when you're clearing the ads, because the ad clear in this was very smooth. Right, got to the boss, but it was like 9 minutes left. I thought this run had it in the bag, super easy. But of course, Diablo had different plans for me. So when you saw me clearing those ads and you see me kind of going in concealment sometimes, it's right. You start thinking that you get the feeling that something's about to start messing you up really bad. You can pop into concealment and kind of hide, but what you really want to do is you want to make sure you get a caltrop down on them first, because remember, the longer they sit in that, the more damage they take. And you can drop that caltrop down and go into concealment, and those guys will just sit there and stand in it. So when you come out of concealment, that thing's stacked way up, and then you can dumpster those guys pretty hard. So that is why we're using subterfuge skills on the chest. And also, that cooldown it gives to concealment is very nice, right? Because that is your only way to break CC if you do get CC'd in the boss. Because concealment you can pretty much use to break CCs in the boss. You really don't need to use it for anything else. That's mostly for sneaking up on the ads when you're in ad clear phase. So Metamorphosis is a good choice too for instead of Shared Misery if you like. And I love Metamorphosis. It's really good for speed farming. It's a lot of fun, and it gives you a permanent unstoppable all the time. CCs don't affect you. Uh, because this build is pretty weak. Like I said, you're you know you do have to watch yourself, and awareness in these fights is key. Like you see all of this stuff coming down and have to avoid all of it. You got to be paying attention. So this isn't just a build where you can just stand there and smack things and be okay. It's maximize damage using Flurry, and that's going to give your attack speed too, right? Because Flurry it only gives you 3 seconds of attack speed, and then Accelerating gives you 5 seconds. So you need to fit that in, but you don't need to spam it. It's takes a little bit to get used to, but yeah, I really like it. I like this build, and you know I am not using the Godslayer crown, even though it's highly recommended to do that to group up the ads. I like the Harlequin's Crest, and I'm just gonna keep going with it, and we're gonna keep pushing these pits because I think right 136 killing this boss. I think you know, I'm gonna try to break 140, and we're just gonna see how I can go. And you know, if I break 140, I'll make another video. And of course, this, you know, I know that the season's kind of coming to an end, and you know, Heartseeker, we're gonna see what happens to it. You know, it's not looking good for it, but right, I'll be making sure I make OP builds for next season too, bringing out more content. That's why you should like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about the build and how it works, or anything that I didn't cover here that you're curious about, you can reach me in the comments below, and I'll get back to you. But that pretty much covers it for like running through the basics of the build and the basics of, you know, what you should be looking for in any build really. um, is thinking about all of those ways to optimize your damage and really paying attention to those skills and what they say. You know, I know sometimes the tooltips lie, so you do have to experiment too. I said in a previous video, the best way to experiment with builds and make sure that they're optimized is to pick a pit level that is somewhat challenging for you, that right, you don't just instantly dumpster the boss and the ads and everything. Yeah, you have to you know, kind of fight things, but not super hard, so you can still be farming at the same time. And as you make build changes and optimizations, you can be testing if you're clearing those faster, if you're killing those bosses faster. It's a very, very good tip because, right, just sitting at the dummies and trying to look at numbers, that's very unreliable way to optimize your build and see if things are working. So, also another really good tip is to use Diablo trade and make sure that you're selling those items. Like there's so much gold to be had. So I see a lot of people just throwing away gear that they, you know, it might not be worth billions, but you know, a couple hundred, few hundred million for pieces. People buy those, and that's, you know, that's how you gear up, right? You go there and you buy those. You know, you're buying pieces of gear, you're selling gear. It's a good way to stay engaged, and it's a good way to keep optimizing your builds and getting better gear. So yeah, Diablo trade, it's very good. And this chick just won't die. I mean, I don't know, man. Just gonna keep beating on her and beating on her. I mean, look at this. You just throw the caltrops down. She just runs out of the caltrops. This guy's, you know, launching fireballs at me. That dude pops up. And so, oh yeah, with this, oh yeah, I want to, while these ads are out, I want to tell you, like, you are using cheap shot with this build. So when these bosses have ads out, I mean, I know I just accidentally killed them there, but you want to try to actually keep those ads out near the boss because you're going to get those stacks of cheap shot. Now next season, that's going to change where when they're stunned, you know, you're going to get full stacks, but still, when they're not stunned, you have those ads around, they're getting CC'd, and you can see on the little bar there that you're actually getting a little extra damage because they're CC'd near the boss. So very, very good tip. That'll give you 25% more damage if you have 5 of them there, and that'll definitely help your DPS, especially if you can keep those ads there while she's CC'd. But that's about it for the tips I have for you guys, and this boss is just about dead. So I'm gonna wrap this up, and we'll just watch this kill. Thanks for watching, and I'll have some more videos coming out, and I'm gonna keep pushing higher and higher, as high as I can. Well, we're gonna see how high I can go. All right.